Not all sci-fi movies are created equal, and that's exactly what makes them so fun. Some are thought-provoking epics that critics and audiences alike hold up as masterpieces, while others, well, let's just say they have character. What happens when fans rally behind a movie that critics absolutely hate? Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Marvelous Videos. Today we'll explore 12 sci-fi movies that are cult classics, but didn't do very well at the box office. This list celebrates those sci-fi movies that boldly went where no film dared to go, earning fans' love despite critical scorn. Sure, some of these movies might be messy, over the top, or downright bizarre, but that's part of their charm. So what are you waiting for? Grab your popcorn and join us as we explore the movies that critics blasted into orbit, but that fans still treasure. Oh, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel while you're at it. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
You must succeed.
Back to the Future Part 2, 1989. This is a movie we all know, a movie we've all seen, and a movie we all loved. The Back to the Future trilogy is considered to be truly legendary and a classic, and for a good reason too. Released in 1989 as the second chapter of the beloved trilogy, it picked up where the original left off, diving headfirst into a time-traveling adventure full of twists, turns, and alternate timelines. The story kicks off with Doc Brown whisking Marty McFly away to the year 2015 to prevent Marty's future son from making a disastrous mistake that would destroy the McFly family's future. But things take a chaotic turn when Biff Tannen gets his hands on the DeLorean and uses it to deliver a sports almanac to his younger self in the past. This sets off a chain reaction to set things right. Marty and Doc must travel back to 1955, navigating the complexities of overlapping timelines to undo the damage and restore their reality, all while staying away from his first trip. Directed by Robert Zemeckis and written by Zemeckis and Bob Gale, this sequel may not have been as universally adored as its predecessor, but it's since carved out a special place in our hearts. Would you believe me if I said critics weren't as impressed with the movie as we were? They actually thought the movie was overly complicated. It lacked something compared to the original, and the plot was too chaotic. I think one thing that quite literally everyone loved was the iconic hoverboard chase scene. Oh man, that made me want to get one so bad. Anyways, I think the problem was that Back to the Future Part 2 wasn't content to just rehash the original's formula. Instead, it turned the concept of time travel into a wild puzzle that required viewers to pay close attention to every detail. From its vision of a futuristic 2015 to the ripple effects of tampering with the past, the movie challenged audiences to keep up. And anyways, despite these mixed reviews, the film did become a box office hit, ranking as 1989's sixth highest domestic gross and third worldwide. Over time, its quirks and complexities have become part of its charm, proving that sometimes being a little overstuffed just means you've got more to love. Venom 2018. Venom swung onto screens as a bold, bizarre, and completely chaotic superhero film, and fans couldn't get enough. I wish I could say the same about critics, though. Directed by Ruben Fleischer, this first installment of Sony's Spider-Man universe introduces us to Eddie Brock, played by none other than Tom Hardy, a down-on-his-luck journalist who stumbles upon an alien symbiote named Venom. What follows is a wild ride of dark humor, outrageous action, and one of Marvel's most unexpectedly entertaining odd couples. The story sees Eddie's obsession with exposing the shady experiments of Life Foundation founder Carlton Drake, Riz Ahmed, land him in serious trouble. When Venom bonds with Eddie, he's suddenly imbued with insane powers and an inner voice that's equally menacing as well as hilarious. As Eddie and Venom learn to coexist, or at least try not to kill each other, their symbiotic relationship evolves into the movie's quirky, beating heart. It's less about saving the world and more about two misfits figuring out how to share one body. Critics took issue with the film's messy plot and tonal shifts, calling it uneven and at times downright ridiculous. Fans, on the other hand, saw those same quirks as features, not bugs. Eddie and Venom's back-and-forth banter had audiences laughing out loud, and the unapologetic dark comedy gave the movie a unique flavor in a genre often filled with polished heroes and moral lessons. Add to that Tom Hardy's committed, sometimes unhinged performance, and you you've got a film that's hard not to enjoy, even if it's a little rough around the edges. And let's not forget the action. With its over-the-top fight scenes and Venom's evil yet somehow lovable design, the movie delivers sheer entertainment value. Also, this was Armageddon. Let me tell you about Armageddon, the most gloriously over-the-top sci-fi disaster flick you'll ever see. Directed by Michael Bay and produced by Jerry Bruckheimer, this movie is a roller coaster of chaos, drama, and questionable science. And I absolutely loved it. A Texas-sized asteroid is barreling toward Earth, set to wipe us all out in 18 days. Naturally, NASA's best solution isn't astronauts or scientists, but Harry Stamper, the world's greatest deep-sea oil driller, and his ragtag crew of blue-collar misfits. They're given the mission to drill into the asteroid and blow it up with a nuke. Makes perfect sense, right? Honestly, don't think too hard about the logic. Just sit back and enjoy the ride. This cast is absolutely stacked. Bruce Willis, Ben Affleck, Liv Tyler, Billy Bob Thornton, Steve Buscemi, Michael Clark Duncan, and even Owen Wilson. They all dive headfirst into Michael Bay's high-octane world of slow-motion hero shots, emotional speeches, and of course, 3 helicopters flying in perfect formation for no reason other than it looks cool. But critics were not kind to this movie. Roger Ebert called it an assault on the eyes, ears, brain, and common sense. And yeah, he's not wrong. The editing is frantic, the science is laughable, and the melodrama is turned up to 11. But who cares? Sometimes you don't need Oscar-worthy storytelling. You just need Bruce Willis saving the world to a killer Aerosmith soundtrack. Ironically enough, the movie was nominated for 4 Oscars and received the Saturn Awards as well. For all its flaws, and there are many, Armageddon is a true guilty pleasure. It's unapologetically cheesy, endlessly entertaining, and exactly the kind of blockbuster they just don't make anymore. Sure, it's absurd. Sure, it's unrealistic, but it's also 2.5 hours of pure, unhinged fun. Jurassic World Dominion. Jurassic World Dominion is the grand finale of the Jurassic World trilogy, a dino-packed spectacle that brings the franchise full circle while stomping all over critics' expectations. Directed by Colin Trevorrow, it's the 6th film in the Jurassic Park saga and promises to be the epic conclusion of the Jurassic era. Though, let's be honest, they'll probably find a way to bring back more dinosaurs down the road. The story picks up 4 years after the destruction of Isla Nublar, with Biosyn up to their usual shady business, Maisie Lockwood on the run, and Ellie Sattler investigating giant mutant insects. Meanwhile, Owen, played by Chris Pratt, and Claire, played by Bryce Dallas Howard, return to wrangle dinos and unravel mayhem, joined by Jurassic Park legends Dr. Grant, Sam Neill, Ellie, Laura Dern, and the ever-quotable Dr. Malcolm, Jeff Goldblum, reuniting for the first time since 1993. It's nostalgia central, and honestly, seeing them together again is worth the ticket price. Critics weren't exactly kind, with some calling it a tired cash grab and others lamenting its lack of suspense compared to Spielberg's iconic original. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a harsh 29%, but let's be real, this movie wasn't made for critics sipping artisanal lattes while debating narrative structure. It was made for the fans who grew up loving dinos, chaos, and Jeff Goldblum's snarky wisdom. As a diehard Jurassic superfan who's watched every single Jurassic movie countless times, I'll admit it, Dominion isn't perfect. Do I think it deserves the pile of T-Rex-sized hate it's been getting? Definitely not. The cinematography is stunning, the CGI and practical effects blend beautifully, and Michael Giacchino's score is as majestic as ever. The new dinos are a fun addition, and the movie stays true to Michael Crichton's themes of man versus nature, corporate greed, and science gone awry. The nostalgia is off the charts. Seeing Grant, Ellie, and Malcolm back together feels like catching up with old friends, and their dynamic is still spot on. The humor, emotion, and throwbacks to the original movie give it that classic Jurassic Park charm. Space Jam, 1996. Space Jam is a movie that brought us the unthinkable. Michael Jordan teaming up with Bugs Bunny to play basketball against cartoonish goons. Yes, it's as delightfully ridiculous as it sounds, and I love it for that. Released by Warner Brothers under their Family Entertainment label, this gem was the first ever film from Warner Brothers feature animation. In fact, to this day, it's still the highest grossing Looney Tunes and basketball movie of all time. Take that, Hoosiers. Basically, an alien amusement park owner, Swackhammer, decides he needs the Looney Tunes as his next big attraction. When Bugs and the gang refuse, Swackhammer's minions, the Nerdlooks, challenge them to a basketball game for their freedom. Sounds like a slam dunk for the Tunes, right? Except the Nerdlooks cheat by stealing the skills of NBA legends like Charles Barkley and Patrick Ewing, transforming into the monstrous Monstars. Desperate, Bugs pulls their ace card, Michael Jordan, fresh out of basketball retirement and clearly unprepared for intergalactic toon drama. Add in Bill Murray for some side-splitting comic relief, and you've got a lineup as legendary as it is absurd. But critics weren't exactly kind, calling it a cynical cash grab inspired by a Nike commercial. Rotten Tomatoes gives it a lukewarm 44%. But hey, Space Jam isn't a deep, meaningful movie. It's about fun, cartoons, and the pure joy of seeing your childhood heroes ball out with the GOAT himself. As a kid, I didn't care if the plot was thin or if Michael Jordan wasn't winning any acting awards. Watching Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, and the gang pull off slapstick hijinks while Jordan slam dunked on aliens was pure magic. The animation still holds up, blending with the live action, and the humor channels the same classic energy that made us love the Looney Tunes in the first place. I, Robot, 2004. I, Robot is what happens when you mix Isaac Asimov's genius with Will Smith's charisma and sprinkle in a whole lot of CGI robots. Directed by Alex Proyas, this sci-fi blockbuster is set in a futuristic Chicago where robots handle everything from delivering mail to saving lives, all while strictly following the famous 3 laws of robotics, or so we think. Enter Detective Del Spooner, played by Will Smith, tasked with investigating the suspicious suicide of U.S. robotics founder Dr. Alfred Lanning, played by James Cromwell. Spooner suspects Sonny, a highly advanced and oddly emotional robot voiced by Alan Tudyk. A robot committing murder? That's a big no-no according to the 3 laws. But the deeper Spooner digs, the more cracks he finds in this supposedly perfect system. The movie isn't just about robots gone rogue, it's also a whodunit with a sleek sci-fi twist. Sure, it's only loosely inspired by Asimov's legendary I, Robot short stories, but it still toys with his big ideas of technology evolving beyond the creator's control. Critics had mixed feelings, calling it a failure of imagination and accusing it of being your standard action-packed summer flick. But honestly, that's what I loved about it. It's a classic popcorn movie, big explosions, shiny robots, and Will Smith cracking jokes while saving the world. Plus, the special effects are still pretty slick, and Sonny's existential crisis adds just enough depth to keep things interesting. As someone who grew up devouring Asimov's books, I don't mind that the movie took creative liberties. Instead of trying to replicate the author's complex philosophical storytelling, the movie gave us a fast-paced, fun ride that still managed to evoke some thought-provoking ideas. Moonfall, 2022. Moonfall is what happens when Roland Emmerich, the king of cinematic destruction, asks, what if the moon decides to quit its orbit and crash land on Earth? Oh, and also, what if that moon is haunted by aliens? Yep, that's the plot. It stars Halle Berry, Patrick Wilson, and John Bradley, all of whom are fully committed to saving Earth from impending doom while dodging physics like it's a game of dodgeball and fighting the AI, of course. Halle Berry plays Jacinda Fowler, a former astronaut who's convinced she has the answer to saving humanity, but naturally nobody listens, except for a disgraced ex-partner and a conspiracy theorist outsider. Together, they team up to fight a sentient alien entity inside the moon because apparently that's just the kind of movie this is. Roland Emmerich isn't here to give you a science lesson, and honestly, would you want him to be? He's the guy who specializes in blowing up famous landmarks, and Moonfall delivers on that front in a spectacular fashion. Gravity waves? Sure. Tsunamis? You bet. Physics? Absolutely not. That's where we draw the line. Even Neil deGrasse Tyson himself called out the movie for breaking more scientific laws per minute than Armageddon, which is both a roast and a selling point if you ask me. The disaster sequences are absurdly over the top, but they're also undeniably fun. While the story feels like it's held together by duct tape and wishful thinking, it somehow keeps you hooked, wondering just how much crazier things can get. Berry and Wilson play their roles with just the right mix of seriousness and self-awareness, while John Bradley's conspiracy theorist turned hero brings some much-needed comic relief. The movie embraces every B-movie trope in the book, from dramatic slow-mo to overly patriotic speeches, and I loved every second of it. So, is Moonfall a masterpiece? No. Is it scientifically accurate? Absolutely not. Is it entertaining? Oh, you bet your gravity-defying popcorn it is. The Day the Earth Stood Still, 2008. The Day the Earth Stood Still is a thriller that brings a fresh spin on the 1951 classic, though not everyone was as dazzled by it as I was. Directed by Scott Derrickson, it stars Keanu Reeves as Klaatu, an alien sent to save Earth from itself, or rather, from humanity's catastrophic environmental impact. Gone are the Cold War tensions of the original, replaced by a much more timely message about saving the planet. Sounds like a sci-fi dream, right? Well, critics didn't quite agree. With only 21% positive reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, many complained the film was all special effects with no substance. Ouch. The thing is, I kind of liked it. Sure, the plot might drag a bit, and the story isn't exactly a brainbuster, but let's be honest, it's an invasion movie with giant robots and apocalyptic destruction. What else do you need? The effects were on point, and the whole thing had a, wow, this is getting out of hand fast feel that kept me glued to the screen. Now let's talk Keanu. Some critics said his performance was wooden, but I think they missed the point. He's an alien, people. He's not supposed to be all warm and fuzzy. His expressionless delivery was spot on for an otherworldly being trying to comprehend human emotions. And honestly, Keanu can do no wrong in my book. I'll admit the movie may not have been a masterpiece, and yes, some scenes might have been a bit too on the nose, but the movie actually had a deep philosophical message that lingers long after the credits roll. It's one of those flicks that stays with you, even if it's a bit messy. Knowing, 2009. Knowing is a thrilling roller coaster that combines mystery, disaster, and a pinch of the supernatural, all starring Nicolas Cage, who is, as usual, giving his all. Directed by Alex Proyas, this film starts off with a somewhat eerie premise. In 1959, a schoolgirl named Lucinda hears voices and writes a bunch of random numbers for a time capsule. Fast forward to 2009, and her numbers resurface, leading her son, Caleb, to discover they predict some major disasters. Naturally, the suspense builds as Cage's character John, an astrophysicist and grieving dad, digs deeper into Lucinda's past, all while his son starts hearing mysterious voices too. Oh, and did I mention there are ominous strangers? Now, if you're expecting a picture-perfect film, Knowing may leave you scratching your head. Some critics found its plot a little absurd, and sure, at times it feels like a heavy-handed disaster movie, but oh boy, when it comes to visuals, this film gets you hooked. The way the disasters unfold on screen, from a deconstructing airplane to a subway train disaster, is mesmerizing, even if it's not exactly heartwarming. I swear, I felt like I was watching a train wreck, in a good way. What I really loved about Knowing was the mystery. You're left in the dark about the bigger picture until the very end. You know the feeling when you're trying to figure out a plot twist before it hits you? This movie lets you think you've cracked it, then bam, everything clicks together in a spectacularly how did I not see that coming moment. All those seemingly random details suddenly make perfect sense. Sure, there are some cringe-worthy lines that feel a little like disaster movie cliches, but honestly, I don't mind. It's the kind of film where you're in it for the thrills, the creepy vibes, and that satisfying aha moment at the end. Event Horizon, 1997. Event Horizon is one of those movies that sneaks up on you like a ghost in the dark. Weird, unsettling, and full of sci-fi horror goodness. Directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, this film stars Lawrence Fishburne, Sam Neill, Kathleen Quinlan, and Jolie Richardson. Set in the year 2047, it follows a crew of astronauts sent to investigate the disappearance of a spaceship called Event Horizon. This ship vanished 7 years ago, but now it's back, and it's not just bringing a space-time puzzle, it's bringing something far worse. The crew of the rescue ship, Lewis and Clark, quickly realize that the Event Horizon isn't just a lost vessel, it's a floating hellscape with a dark force that's way beyond their wildest nightmares. The atmosphere is tense, the visuals are disturbing, and the whole thing feels like a haunted house on a spaceship, with a little interdimensional twist. Critics initially panned it, calling it pointlessly loud, but that's like saying a haunted house is too spooky. Of course it's loud. It's a spaceship full of terror and existential dread. The science is pretty wacky, but isn't that why it's called science fiction and not science fact? The film's initial box office run was a flop, but home video sales brought it back to life, kind of like the Event Horizon itself. Oh, deep. In the years since, it's gained a cult following, with many fans calling it one of the best horror films out there. It's smart, it's creepy, and it's far more disturbing than you might expect. With some lost footage and a little more time, this could have been up there with Hellraiser and Alien. Jupiter Ascending, 2015. Jupiter Ascending is one of those movies that's so bonkers, it feels like someone gave the Wachowskis a spaceship, a bucket of glitter, and said, go wild. And wild they went. Directed and co-produced by the Wachowskis, the brilliant minds behind The Matrix, this space opera stars Channing Tatum and Mila Kunis, a pairing so gorgeous it's almost a crime against humanity. Tatum's got wings. Seriously, space wings. And Kunis is just an ordinary cleaning lady with the wild discovery that she's got a destiny that goes way beyond scrubbing toilets on Earth. The story takes us to a universe that's like The Matrix meets Star Wars, with a dash of consumerism and indulgence sprinkled on top. Jupiter Jones, played by Kunis, gets swept up in a cosmic tale of intrigue, while Kane Wise, played by Tatum, an interplanetary warrior, tells her she's got a pretty big destiny to fulfill. Like really big, but don't expect an easy ride. The movie has a plot that's as confusing as trying to fold a fitted sheet, but it's still a blast to watch. While it got roasted by critics, a solid 28% on Rotten Tomatoes, and yeah, it may be a little incoherent at times, there's something oddly charming about its chaos. Critics said the movie was inane from the first frame to the last, but hey, at least it didn't bore us. It's got the visuals to back up its spacey ambitions, the acting is solid, and the sci-fi elements, super original. If you're a fan of flicks like Stargate, Blade Runner, or even The Last Starfighter, this film's got your name written in stardust. It's definitely not high cinema by any stretch, and it might borrow a few ideas from other iconic franchises, but it's a fun, colorful space adventure that knows exactly what it is. Mortal Engines 2018. Mortal Engines is set in a post-apocalyptic world where cities are now giant moving monstrosities on wheels. Yes, you heard that right. This movie takes the term urban sprawl to a whole new level. Directed by Christian Rivers and based on the 2001 novel by Philip Reeve, it's an eye-popping ride of wheels, gears, and very questionable science. If you've ever wondered what happens when cities decide they're tired of staying in one place, well, Mortal Engines has the answer. At the heart of it all is Hester Shaw, played by Hira Hilmar, a young woman with a vendetta and her mother's memory driving her. She teams up with Tom Natsworthy, played by Robert Sheenan, a London outcast, and Anna Fang, played by Ji-Hae, a badass outlaw with a price on her head. Together, they face off against a giant, city-eating city that's bent on devouring everything in its path. You know, casual stuff. Critics weren't exactly cheering from the rooftops, calling it a mechanical, soulless, dystopian theme park ride to nowhere. Yikes. Sure, it's got some stunning special effects, cities on treads, people, but the plot feels like it's been thrown together with leftover Star Wars references and some questionable physics. Can we talk about the absurdity of cities on treads and hydrogen in air cities? Why? Did no one stop to ask why they weren't using helium for floaty things? Not to mention, the energy it would take to run these city-sized behemoths could power a small moon. Honestly though, it's bizarre and absurd, and it's really fun. It's like fast food for your brain. Cheap, flashy, and probably not the greatest thing for your cinematic diet, but hey, it's a ride. So if you're into wild special effects and a story that doesn't take itself too seriously, then you'll find yourself surprisingly entertained. Just don't think too hard about the plot, or you'll end up with a headache and a lot of questions. Marvelous verdict. And there you have it. From the world-ending chaos of Moonfall to the unpredictable steampunk thrill ride of Mortal Engines and the fascinating concepts of Event Horizon, we've taken a delightful detour through some of the wildest, most visually stunning movies ever made. You just have to love the audacity of these films. It's like a smorgasbord of sci-fi madness where the rules of physics, logic, and sometimes good taste are all optional. Whether you're in it for the eye-popping effects, the so bad it's good moments, or the pure unadulterated fun of it all, these films prove that sometimes it's all about the ride. Sure, you might be asking why the science doesn't check out, but if you stop asking questions, you'll just have a blast. And really, who doesn't want a good distraction from the world, where cities can roll on treads and robots are either saving or destroying us? Now, I've got to ask, what's your favorite ridiculous movie? Is there one that completely broke your suspension of disbelief, but you loved it anyway? Is it one of the ones I've talked about? If you haven't watched any of these movies yet, I'd highly suggest you do, and let me know how you like it down below. Happy watching, and if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, and be safe. Thanks, everyone.